participate in this discussion. I hope you've been enjoying your classes. And just want to say that I'm sure you know that we have very good TAs with us. We have Sonia from ISER Mohali, Jobin and Chiti from ISER Tirupati. So, I mean, I think it's a great group to discuss this idea of bioacoustics and animal communication. Can you hear me? Just someone said that they can't hear me.
We can hear you, Robin. I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, hello, Robin.
Hi.
Hi. So, once we wait for the, I think there is already a question.
Oh, okay.
No, I was just copying from the Google Sheet.
Discussion forum.
Yeah, no, the Google Sheet. There was one question.
Okay. One question from the Google Sheet. Yeah.
Shall I also copy from the discussion forum? It should be easier. I mean, it's already been answered, but yeah.
Yeah, please, you can copy from anywhere. So is there a difference in vocalization during flight and at perch rest in terms of the amount of energy usage, node frequency, etc.? Yeah, well, I think that as you will hear from various speakers, it all depends on what the function is. And a lot of the flight calls are very specific, but in flight, there are some which are displays and some that are communication calls to maintain like flock cohesion and so on. So yes, there is a difference in energy usage, and you should also think that species like passerines, when they are vocalizing, actually it's the time that they are also not feeding. So there's a cost which is slightly more than just the cost of vocalizing, right? So there's it's an opportunity cost in some sense. Related to song posts, it also gives out the location to the predator. So what is the trade-off? Yeah, I think that is an interesting idea. And you should read there are nice papers on social behavior by Zahavi and co. They studied babblers in Arabia, and I wish Manjari was here. But Sonia, if you'd like to join in, please kind of feel free to chime in. But essentially, Zahavi had this really nice idea, this theory that the birds, that do the detection of predators, they are like sentinels, like the watchmen, but they do it at a great risk to themselves because they expose their location. So they say this is like what is called the handicap principle, that the individual is actually trying to say that I'm so fit that I can incur a significant handicap and still, survive and so on. And they tested this hypothesis by looking at the hierarchy of different individuals in a group. So if it is the handicap principle, then basically the most dominant species should be the one individual, should be the one that is making the calls. And if it is like let's say a general that pushes the soldiers front, so the lowest ranking individual should get the most risk. And they tested this hypothesis and they found that it's actually the most dominant individual that usually acts as a sentinel. So that's the idea. How well it works, that's a little bit of depends on the system and so on.
Yeah,
Sonia, would you like to
Robin, I
add?
can add
Please.
a little bit in this. So regarding the mechanism of the, I think everyone can hear me, right? No? So regarding the mechanism of the song production, so when they produce the song and it produce the frequency, it's give out in such a way that it's very short, and then for the it make it very difficult for the predator to locate the location of the song also. So that's also another mechanism to avoid the giving out the location of the this thing to the predator. That's one point that I can add, I guess. Thank you, Robin. I think we can proceed with the next question.
Yeah, so that was Sachin's question about song posts. And then Ram has a question, would it be correct process? No, what would be the correct process to check the difference between song vocalizations of the same species across its range? That's an interesting question. And I think that it is something that people who do research, worry about quite a lot. Because as you would have now heard, that songs can be impacted by different things. And one of it is the physical properties in which it is propagated, the sound is propagated. So there is the acoustic adaptation hypothesis. So if you're comparing, let's say, a magpie robin in very closed habitats, that may be very different from magpie robin in open habitat. Like, I mean, in Andamans, for example, magpie robin is found very closed kind of habitat as well. So I would think that you have to take that into consideration, the habitat, how dense the habitat is, because the propagation properties vary. There are studies that look at latitudinal differences, like difference in songs up the mountain, lower, based on just the physical pressure properties, apart from geographical isolation. I think what most people who study songs are interested in, well, I shouldn't say that. I think that it really depends on the question you're asking. So if you're looking at how species adapt to different habitats, how they respond, then the responses and the different your design should include that. Otherwise, you should control for that. So if you're looking at variation across, let's say, distance, so then you want to control for all of these other factors that may confound your the data that you're getting. I hope that's a little bit clearer. That's from Ram, response to Ram. Lakshmi Bharadwaj says, how to differentiate sub-songs from actual songs through spectrogram. Does the sub-songs behave different on a graph? I don't know, do Sonia or Chiti, do either of you want to take that?
I think Chiti, are you there? I think you can take that.
Yes, sorry, I missed the question.
So it's about sub-songs. How do you differentiate sub-songs from actual songs through spectrograms? And does these sub-songs behave different on a graph? Which I think is a spectrogram.
So what are actually subsongs? I'm a bit confused. So you usually have a song and then you have, I mean, it depends on the variability of the song. So what is actually a subsong? I think it depends on context.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt, but in one of the video, subsongs was said those birds which are learning their actual songs, that learning curve, they They
Oh,
string few
so
notes, no?
So you mean like a not fully crystallized song?
Yeah, not fully crystallized one. Ma'am had
Oh.
showed a graph and she showed that there are areas where a newly fledged will have only few notes, and then there will have, then it develops to
Sure.
subsongs, and then it crystallizes to actual song.
Right.
That's
So
subsong I asked.
it'll actually pretty much look the same, but probably the subsong is going to have lesser number of note types, as you mentioned. So the notes would be same in the main song as well, but probably the subsong has lesser note types.
Then what does it mean crystallized, ma'am? Like how?
Crystallized means when it's completely like it's fixed. So then the song doesn't change.
So there will be variation when it is
There
not
will
fixed,
be-
right?
There will be no variation, no more variation.
No
It'll
more
have that
variation. Okay.
repertoire that is fixed.
Then yeah, then if that happens, if there is no other repertoire and it is fixed, okay, there will be all those variations. Is that lost or is that added to the repertoire, ma'am?
Some of them are lost and some of them remain. So you have open-ended learners and closed-ended learners, and songs
Okay.
will crystallize only in the closed-ended learners because the open-ended learners are continuously learning.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah. And I see that there is a follow-up question in the chat box, which is that from Sachin about the song posts. And I think that maybe I didn't make that very clear. So song posts are not just for alarm calls. It is also used for attracting females. That is correct. Except that it's different. Like, how do you say it's different? Because the song that when the bird is on a song post for attracting females, it's actually broadcasting a signal continuously for that purpose. But when there is a sentinel, it's not always calling. It will just be there, being vigilant, like literally like a watchman. And only when there is a threat or something like that, it may call. There may be some contact calls to keep in touch. I mean, if you've seen these watchmen, heard the watchman whistle, or say "Jaagte raho" or something like that, that's pretty much it. Yeah, attracting females, it happens at specific times, and they are singing all the time. So slightly different. Yeah, thanks for that message, Sachin. Interesting. Lakshmi says, among the birds which mimic, those which possess greater repertoire has greater chances of mating. Do these birds have their own personal voice? Do they have only those songs which they can mimic? Can calls also be mimicked? Okay, that's a lot of questions and very interesting. Again, Sonia, Chiti, Jobin, any of you would like to take? I'm happy.
Hello, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think birds like that mimic other birds. It doesn't mean that they don't have their own voice or song. They do have, but they use this mechanism of mimicry to utilize in a way such as in kleptoparasitism, to steal food from others. And and regarding the chances of mating and all, it's like it can mimic not only from the biotic perspectives, from the abiotic environment. Like, say for instance, trafficking noise. There are like instances of mimicking bird from the surrounding abiotic environment and all. So they do increase this kind of repertoire in their calls or songs, so that mostly for attraction is song. So they will increase this repertoire so that they can have a better chance of mating. And I think the first part, I have made it, I hope it's clear. And for the second part, do they have only those songs which they mimic? No, I think I have answered this question also, that they don't have only those songs that they mimic. They have their own songs. Mimicry is considered when they, besides their own song, they mimic the other calls or other songs. Calls can also be mimicked. I hope that's clear. I think, Robin, I think you can make it more clear now, I guess.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect, Sonia. I mean, I hope, Lakshmi, it depends on whether you caught
Well,
on.
Lakshmi, I think.
Yeah. So,
It was clear, sir. It was clear. I understood, sir.
yeah, thank you, Lakshmi. There's another question which is Amarnath actually asked a very interesting question, which is, how do you know it's a mimicry? And I think there's a guest lecture. I don't know, Sonia, if that guest lecture is done yet. Samira's lecture, is it over?
Yeah, yes, Robin, it's
Okay,
done.
okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, so if you guys paid attention to that, Samira has done some very interesting research where she asked the same question, and she says, how do you know if it is mimicry or just a coincidental similarity? And she tries to answer this in different ways. One is using a machine learning algorithm to detect things that are spectrally very similar. And then she gets humans to, she plays sounds and shows them spectrograms and says, are these similar? And she does this with naive individuals, who know songs, but may not know the context of all of these. And very fascinating. She finds that humans are actually able to use some kind of cognitive skills which are better, but the machine, her algorithm also does fairly well. So it's there are ways to detect it, is what I'm trying to say. Hi, Manjari, you're also here now.
Hi, Robin. Sorry, there was a cat that had entered someone's office. So there was this big, Anyway, hi.
Yeah. So we're just taking different questions. I mean, you can just jump in. We're looking at a question type from Ram. And I think this one I can take. This one at 5:13. Ram says the same species seems to have different songs, even though they're displaced only by a few kilometers and by 300, 400 meters in altitude. Actually, it's not really the distance or the altitude that matters. What matters is what is important for that species. So, what is isolation for a specific species? So I'm sure that you're on an ornithology course, so you know that birds can move really, across the globe, and that's not surprising. So when birds are just like human populations and things like that, cultures can spread, but in some species they don't move as much. So how much restricted they are, and that is the axis at which the songs also differ. The culture differs. So it's not the measure of absolute kilometers or absolute meters. It's what is it that the bird is responding to? Is it a habitat feature? Is it different habitat type? Is there a mountain in between? Is there a river in between? And things like that. So Manjari, you can take the next question if.
Where is this typed? Somehow I can't see this anywhere.
This is in the chat box, but I think that the chat.
There are only two questions.
Because she joined.
You joined
later.
late. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Shall I read it out?
Yeah, please, Jobin.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, all scenes have their repertoire and have different song types for different contexts. So do they then not have the need to evolve other kinds of sound making mechanisms like drumming of the woodpeckers or feather sounds by club-tailed manakin or common snipe? So basically she's asking, all scenes have their repertoires. Yeah, they have different song types for different contexts. So So do they not need to evolve other kinds of sound making mechanisms like drumming and feather sounds?
I think, ma'am, you can add to this, but it's already been answered in the discussion forum, I guess. But I guess you can answer it here also.
No, you can just read it out from the discussion forum if that's okay with you,
Okay.
in case he has not seen it yet.
Yeah, sure.
So basically, it's not as though our science will not have any alternate mechanism of signaling. So it's not as though just because they can sing and they can produce complex vocalization, they can, everything else is ruled out. That's not how it is. But basically, there are how shall I say? There are mostly only the ossines are the ones who can produce this complex mechanisms, such as drumming or any other kind, could still be a byproduct of the signaling modality, some other signaling modality. So it could still be there, but to say that they do not need to evolve other kinds of sound making mechanism, I am not quite sure what to say here. So I'm curious what is written in the discussion forum.
Sure. Sorry, ma'am. It was not addressed like to you. It was addressed to Robin, so I kept it separate. So
okay, so you can, yeah.
I think Robin, I think you can answer for the next part of the questions.
Which is that the Ossines one?
Drumming, Ossines one, yeah. Sound making mechanisms like drumming of the woodpeckers or feather.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure. So it's just that, see, I think that the way we have to think about sounds and how birds do this is that there's a lot of different ways birds make sounds, and I think one of the lectures covers this. I'm not sure which one. Either it's mine or Anand's, or maybe it's there in Manjari's also.
And I think Anand does the mechanism of sound production. I talk about the neural.
Anand sir does the mechanism, sir, and the whole physiology of sound production, and then Manjari ma'am takes the other process.
Yeah.
I do the song learning part, and then I think function is covered by you.
That's right. So I think the sounds may come from various parts of the body, and it's not that Ossines or sub-Ossines have only one or the other. You will find Ossines that also use like wing flicks and fluttering and things like that. They use a kind of multimodal display. It's like a performance, I mean, sometimes songs and dances go together. There's a very nice paper on mannequins, I think, or I forget, maybe the Birds of Paradise, where somebody analyzed how complex are the dance patterns, and how complex are the song structures. And he finds a trade-off, basically. So as the songs get more complex, the dances are actually simpler. So, I mean, birds are figuring out the best way to get the signal across. And in different circumstances, it's different things. I don't think there's one or the other so clearly.
Black and ashy drongo, only this drongos are mimicry, or any other bird species do mimicry? Well, the racket-tailed drongo, I'm sure has Samira's mimicry lecture already happened, or do we know? Sonia?
Yeah, Samira is done. Yeah, her lecture is available in the portal.
Yeah,
So-
so she must have talked about the racket-tailed drongo. So of course, racket-tailed drongo amongst drongos also does mimicry, but there are so many other birds that do mimicry, like outside of Indian birds, for instance, lyrebird is there, then mockingbirds are there. Even in Indian birds, there are several other species that mimic other species and sounds in their environment. Then there's one question by Aisha. I'm just reading it out, Robin, in case it's relevant to you. How
Sure.
can one study the differentiation in vocalization at an individual level, species that does not show sexual dimorphism? Does color banding the individual or species who live in groups affect them in any way? Is it like the group disowns them or may find problems in finding mates if color banding is done? So, well, Robin, do you want to answer this?
I was
Well,
actually
very quickly, I
wondering
can
if,
say color banding. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was actually going to let Sonia or Chiti answer it, actually.
Yeah, maybe they should. Sonia, Chiti, do you guys want to address this? Does color banding affect their behavior or their survival or ability to stay in the group or breeding?
Maybe Sonia could take the question on color banding with social species or group birds, but for birds that are solitary, that are not social, color banding, I'm not aware of any studies where color banding has found to affect anything with them.
Were your banded birds thrown out of the group, Sonia? So I was
Yeah, so far from my observations, the color bending doesn't seem to have an effect on the grouping of the group living birds also. So it's a very standardized protocol and procedure that I use in the ornithology. So far the study have done like there doesn't seem to be any effect on their behavior, and
so we don't have any evidence, Aisha, that this is causing any kind of impact on them with respect to either solitary species or social species. There was long ago, there was one study which showed that in some species, they found some evidence of an inclination of females to prefer males with the red color band or something like this. But again, this was this one study in which also, if I remember, it was more of a qualitative thing. There was no quantitative study done. So no. And how can one study the differentiation and vocalization in individual level? So there are very, like you have to know a lot of acoustics to be able to do such things. It is not just characterizing simple songs. So it is a very involved process. One has to look at within individual differences, between individual differences, control for various factors. So yes, it can be studied, but it's very hard to do. Sonia, is there something?
No. There are some questions in the above this thing. So I think I will read it out loud.
Okay.
There's also a hand up, Sonia. Lakshmi is...
Lakshmi Bhardwaj.
Okay.
Good evening, ma'am, everyone. Are there any dialects in songs of the songbird? Like in humans, we don't speak the same language in the same way like other person does. So in that way, does these conspecific species have their own dialects based on the place they are? For example, I'm just trying to understand if a crow caws in the same, let us take a crow example. Does that caw the same way in all the places, or there are dialects in it? Like if the birds have their own.
Yeah, can I ask that back to you? What do you think? Would there be dialects? And even based on the discussion that we've been having, and of course the classes that you've attended, what are your thoughts?
I think there should be dialects because each individual is different, and as Chiti ma'am said, it takes some time to the subsong to get crystallized into proper song. So each individual will bring individuality to each song. So there must be some kind of dialect, no sir. I was just interested in and intrigued. That's it. But if
Yeah,
it is if it is there, if the dialects are there, how each species, each individual will understand the other individuals. So like if the pronunciation is different, it might not resonate correctly to the other species, which they are
So-
sending the
So what do you
message.
think? What level will they stop understanding?
I think according to all these materials I got, I think once the crystallization fixes and then each individual is fixed with what the repertoire they have, then maybe the changes will be permanent and it might differ, until
Yeah.
the organism reaches until the species reaches the maturity level, then there will be some kind of fluidity, right? So I just got confused and I read somewhere, so I just asked.
Yeah, sure. So also another thing to remember is that it depends on the species. That's like, so some species, like you were saying about crow, so some of these crows can fly really far. So their differentiation doesn't happen at small geographical scales. So species ecology determines how fast or how different.
Because these shy birds, the skulking birds like the warblers and other stuff, they those who migrate also the same season. The adult 1 year they come and they sing some bird. Does it change the next dialect changes the next year they come, or they sing the same song? Because these warblers are hardly seen. We can only identify them through their calls. Some are so similar, we get confused. So how does this species themselves manage if it is this dialect?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, again, I'd like to see if Chiti or Jobin or Sonia want to take this.
Hello, Lakshmi. Yeah, I think, yeah, so we always look from our perspective when we look at the animal behavior and all, but it's not necessary that the way we perceive things and the way we receive things is similar to birds also. So there might be some thresholds, some mechanisms that can identify the songs and up to what limit they can identify. And for that, we have different protocols, different manipulative experiments that can be done, like to make sure whether they are able to identify and the songs, the different songs they are producing. Say for instance, we collect a song from a different region, from Rajasthan, say for instance, and we want to play the same song to the Delhi for the same species, but in a different region. And we want to check whether they can identify whether they react in a different manner or whether they react in the same manner. So from that perspective, we can assure that the calls, whether the calls, they can identify the different dialect or not. And this is from the experimental, manipulative experimental. And we can do it from the, like the song difference, whether there is a song difference or not, it's from the, by looking at the spectrogram. So we can check whether the frequency difference is there or not.
Is
so
there
I
any
hope
good papers on that, so ma'am, or any resource for that particular, dialects of songbirds?
yeah,
Because
there are
I
lots
tried
of
to search
papers.
on, I tried to search in the Google, but I couldn't get any definitive thing. That's why I asked.
Now add the keyword Robin Vijayan. You might find something.
Oh, okay, ma'am. Thank you.
That's funny. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll read out the next question. If male always teaches to the chicks in early time, all chicks, irrespective of their sexes, will learn male songs. Is that right? Don't we have different songs for male and female, or do they learn both male, female songs later?
Is it addressed to me or to Robin?
I don't know. I just saw that information from Dr. Robbins' video. So I just thought of asking that question because there was a mention that in the early days, chicks, male will teach them the song. So I was under the impression that probably everybody will learn the song from male's perspective.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating questions. And the question that you touch upon is not the process of learning, but the idea of female song is actually is very much in vogue today. A lot of researchers are studying that, and that's largely because there's been this unrecognized. So essentially, people have been studying male songs for forever, but they've not been looking at the female songs, mostly because some of the birds in the temperate areas and in the New World, they don't have much of a female song. But people are finding that in the Old World and the tropical areas, there are a lot of birds with female songs. So if you even Google female song project, you'll find a lot of interesting literature on that. And I think we are only beginning to understand what the function of that might be and how the learning in that happens. I think it's fascinating. It's just it's a fascinating field of how cultures transmit, how they transmit in the ways that you're also talking about in terms of exposure, what they pick, what crystallizes, what gets transmitted further. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, then the next question is from Aisha. Do individuals of a species have individual differentiation in their vocalization?
Yeah, I think I answered that partly already.
Yeah.
She asked the same question again in the chat box. How can one study differentiation in vocalization at individual levels? So yes, there are individual level variation in some species. And you must remember that this is what we are examining. So in the sense that whether they are signatures, vocal signatures of identity, whether it exists as we analyze them, but we don't know whether the way we perceive the song, is that how the animals also perceive it. So even if we find that there are individual identity, it may not be something that the species itself utilizes. So the information being there in principle as per our signal processing ability does not imply that biologically it is still meaningful. Does that make sense? So the individual signature may be there. If you're looking at the data, if you're analyzing the signals in some software, so you might find that yes, there is individual signatures, but they may not be utilizing that information. For that, one has to do all kinds of controlled experiments. So that is one thing. The other thing is that in animal behavior, there's a concept of Umwelt. I don't know if I talked about it in the last discussion or not. So this problem will always be there, whether we don't know how they are perceiving the world around them. And therefore, we are only making an assumption that, well, this signal is there or this signature is there, and therefore maybe they're picking it up, but we will never be sure. So for that, of course, one has to design very clever experiments to be able to conclude that. But signatures being present and being used are two very different things.
Okay. Next question is from Sachin. Do birds use song when they are stationary, when they are in motion and producing songs? The listener may perceive different frequency, at least we humans do. So do birds have a special ability to recognize frequency correctly, even its source is moving?
So for Doppler, I think you have to read up a little bit and see when will it be relevant for what frequency range, and the sound source should be moving at a certain speed such that it should move faster than the sound can move, right? So think Will that happen for birds given the kind of frequency range in which they vocalize and how fast they can move? I leave it for you to
Okay.
find out, Sachin. But it's an interesting
Sure,
question.
I'll explore more. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything else, Sonia? Jobin, Chitti, is there anything else or are we done?
I forgot to unmute. It's for now, we have addressed all the questions from the Excel, this thing, Google Sheet also, I guess. And yeah, I think we have addressed most of the questions, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great. Robin, do you want to?
No, that's fine. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
If there are no other questions. Nice
Uh,
meeting
Any
Robin,
other pressing questions? Anybody?
Nothing from my side. Thank you, ma'am and sir.
Okay. Okay, then.
Robin,
Yeah, great.
sorry. There is one question for you, I guess, from the discussion forum. So I'll read it out loud. So,
Sure.
can different species of birds communicate with each other? How do they identify the calls of birds of other group members? What is the mechanism of communication used between chicks and parent birds?
Sorry, between what is the last bit?
Between chicks and parent birds.
I see. Yeah, so these are, I think, different things. So there are some nice studies that even in India, there's David Wheatcroft studies which are really fascinating. He looks at how certain kinds of calls are converging, like alarm calls particularly, and these are signals that are meant not just for its own species, or it can be hacked, others can read into those signals and they know that there is a predator because and there is a convergence of these kinds of calls. And David Wheatcroft actually shows that depending on the community you're in, that can change. So basically the communities are converging on a common signal differently in different places. So to answer your question in a brief manner, yes, species do listen to other sounds. They understand some things, but what are relevant for them? It's not, in the way that humans listen and understand language. There are some signals that are meant for that can be understood more broadly. Those do happen. This learning is different from the chick to parent learning process.
So sorry to interrupt, but there are kind of eavesdropping occasions also, no sir. Like if one species is trying to send a message that it has got some food or something, it can be eavesdropped by the not intended species also, no sir. So eavesdrop.
Yeah, that's also very much part of it. Yeah, thank you for that clarity.
They could understand the other species so well that they can eavesdrop, or like, because you said only some kind of messages they can understand also. That's why I just wanted to know.
I'm a little concerned about the choice of words you're using here, because it's not understanding like how we humans understand words and the meaning of those words. Basically, they are broad signals, so, and that they can understand. And this understanding is at an evolutionary level. It's not an understanding that is, that is just listening to a few words and then this is what it means. That's not the way that works. The evolutionary level happens by.
Sorry, sir. I read that word eavesdropping in one of the articles. Yeah,
eavesdropping is correct, but just the way that has to be interpreted, how birds learn things, these are different, because actually these are like traits and the signals are learned over a longer period of time.
Okay, so what eavesdropping is for humans is completely different for the bird species.
I mean, eavesdropping for humans is in some sense similar, in the sense that you may listen to some gossip somebody else is saying. But that is a signal for you. It works for you as a human. But the signal for, a drongo example that you may have heard Samira talk about is that babbler has caught a nice juicy worm. I mean, mostly they don't signal that, but yeah, but you get the idea, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
It leads to the eavesdropping leads to a gain for one species and loss for one species, no sir. It's so in a broader sense, it's similar to humans, like right? The way they interpret the word eavesdropping. Even in eavesdropping, humans might not gossip, but they can get some kind of a profit out of it, no sir. Like
Social benefit as well. Yeah. Certainly. Very broadly, it's right. I mean, if you were in my graduate student class, I would have grilled you more about this, but I'll let you off. Yeah.
I would love to be a graduate, sir. That would be a dream come true.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Lakshmi.
Yeah, I think
We can end there.
yes,
then.
I think we
Thanks,
can
everybody.
we can
Nice
in the sessions.
Interactions. Thank you, Sonia.
Uh,
Thank you, Chiti, and Manjari too. Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you all. Yeah.
Bye, Robin.
Bye.